Hill, Democratic Senator Al Franken of Minnesota. Senator, thank you for being on the show this morning. I'm wondering if you look at the conversation you had with Senator Sessions just a bit differently this morning, and what's your take?
Yes, I do. I asked him, there had been some breaking news as we were recessing for a while in the hearings, and when we came back, it had broken that members of the Trump campaign had met with Russians. And I asked him, since he was, these were hearings for him to be Attorney General, what would he do if he learned that members of the Trump campaign team had been meeting with the Russians? And he didn't answer my question, which probably should have been, I'd recuse myself. But what he did was, instead he pivoted and said, well, I was a campaign surrogate, or considered one, and I never met with the Russians.
Right.
And that is at best extremely misleading. Here we are.
But let me ask you this. So you say it's at best extremely misleading. I don't want to be too harsh here, but if you just look at it on the page, I'm saying this as a lawyer, I mean, it looks like a lie. It looks like perjury. It looks like whatever you want to call it.
What's your gut?
And he volunteered the information, which seems all the more damning.
Yes, and that's why I mentioned that. When I say the most charitable interpretation of that would have to mean that either he forgot, didn't remember meeting with the Russian ambassador, which now that I've learned it's twice, is very hard to believe, or was saying, well, I met with, but not about the campaign, which he's now saying, except in between saying, I didn't talk about the campaign, what came out was, well, oh yeah, I talked to the Russian ambassador, but I don't remember what I talked about. Well, which one of the three things is it? Right. Do you not remember what you talked about? If you don't remember what you talked about, then you don't remember that you didn't talk about the campaign.
Yep.
Senator Franken, it's Willie Geist. Good to see you this morning. If we rewind the tape and you asked that question, and Senator Sessions at the time said, actually, Senator Franken, I did meet last year twice with the Russian ambassador, once at the Republican convention, once here in Washington. I met him as a senator. I met him as a member of the Armed Services Committee, and we discussed foreign policy, foreign affairs. Would that have raised red flags for you, or would that have sounded like a routine meeting?
Well, I'm not on the Foreign Affairs Committee, but I think we've learned today that the Washington Post asked a lot of members of the Foreign Affairs Committee, none of whom, including Chairman McCain, have met in the last year with the Russian ambassador. He met twice. This is pretty suspicious. I certainly would have said you need to recuse yourself should there be an investigation of this incredibly serious interference by a foreign government, electronic warfare against the United States of America by this other superpower.
So, Senator, where does this go from here now with this new revelation? What's the next step in your mind?
Well, in my mind, Jeff Sessions should clarify some of this. As I said, this is now these are contradictory statements, and I think that he should immediately recuse himself from any of this. I think that we should have a special prosecutor that is appointed by not by Jeff Sessions, but not by anyone with any ties to the campaign. That we need an independent special prosecutor.
Senator, your colleague Elizabeth Warren, also Nancy Pelosi, have called for Attorney General Sessions to resign. Do you agree with that?
I think that what should be forthcoming is the Attorney General coming forward, answering questions about this, and coming forward with the truth. Because, again, he's contradicting himself, and for him to say, or for their spokesman to say that he had no recollection of his conversation, and then for later to say, well, I did talk to him, but we didn't talk about the election, that's contradictory. and his responses to me weren't accurate. So I would like to see him answer questions at a press conference, and I'd like to see, and then we can decide whether he should resign or not, but he certainly, at the very minimum, should recuse himself. This just makes common sense.
Right.
He must recuse himself from any investigation the FBI is doing, from any investigation at all into the ties of the Trump campaign to the Russians, as the Russians were interfering with our democratic elections.
Senators, you talk to your Republican colleagues and look at their statements publicly. Do you get the sense that they have a zeal for getting to the bottom of the relationship between the Trump organization and the Russians during the campaign, or are they trying to protect the administration?
I think it depends on the member. You know, I think some of them have a zeal and some have less than a zeal.
Elise.
Senator Franken, Elise here.
I think some are zealous.
Yes.
Low zeal.
That's the word.
We get it.
They're
Go
low
ahead,
in
Elise.
zeal.
Go ahead, Elise.
Senator Franken, I'm just curious, what would it take to end all of the speculation about President Trump's administration ties to Russia ultimately?
Oh, it would take, I believe, an independent investigation. I think that the president should turn over his tax returns. His excuses for not turning over his tax returns during the campaign were completely bogus. You can open your tax returns if you're under audit. And also, I don't think he was under audit, because it's easy to prove you're under audit. You produce a letter from the IRS saying you're under audit. So I think we need to see his tax returns. We need to see, we've heard his son say that there was a tremendous amount of Russian money in their business. We've seen Wilbur Ross, who when I met him, I liked him, but then it came out that he was a major stakeholder in this bank that laundered money for Russian oligarchs and former members of the KGB. This is really hinky.
All right.
On that note, Senator Al Franken, thank you very, very much.
The two words that we learned this morning from Senator Franken.
Zealous
And hinky.
No, actually,
And with
very
that,
serious
sir,
story.
you
Thank
have
you.
done your job.